Jasmine never imagined a simple business deal would turn her world upside down. Hired to play the perfect girlfriend for billionaire Graham Sinclair, she thought it was all an act, until emotions blurred the lines. Now, as their contract nears its end, one question remains. Was it ever just business? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The Sinclair mansion stood tall on the highest hill of Boston, much like its owner's reputation in the business world. Graham Sinclair sat at the head of the long mahogany dining table, his attention fixed on the quarterly reports rather than the expensive steak growing cold on his plate. "You could at least pretend to be interested in the family dinner," Margaret Sinclair said, her voice cutting through the silence. At 65, she still commanded the same respect she had when running the Sinclair empire before handing it to her son. Graham looked up, his steel blue eyes showing no emotion. "I have a company to run, Mother, and a life to live," his sister Catherine added from across the table. "When was the last time you went on a date?" Graham put down his fork with a sigh. This conversation was becoming too frequent lately. "I don't have time for dating." Margaret dabbed her lips with a napkin. "Well, make time. The Henderson family has invited us to their annual charity gala next weekend. Their daughter Vanessa will be there." "You're trying to set me up," Graham raised an eyebrow. "I'm 40, not 14, and still unmarried," his mother reminded him. "The board members are starting to wonder if you're stable enough to continue leading the company." Graham's jaw tightened. "My personal life has nothing to do with my ability to run Sinclair Enterprises." "In this world, everything is connected," Margaret said. "People trust family men. It's time you settled down." Catherine leaned forward. "Mother has been talking with the Hendersons. They're very interested in a potential match between you and Vanessa." "A match?" Graham stood up, his patience wearing thin. "This isn't the 1800s. I'm not agreeing to an arranged marriage." Margaret remained calm. "Then find someone yourself. You have until the end of the month. I've already told the board you'll be bringing your serious girlfriend to the company's anniversary gala." "Girlfriend?" Graham almost laughed. "I don't have a girlfriend." "Then get one," his mother said simply, "or I'll move forward with the Hendersons." Graham left the dining room without another word. In his study, he poured himself a whiskey and stared out the window at the city lights below. His phone rang. It was David, his assistant, and the closest thing he had to a friend. "Bad time?" David asked. "My mother is trying to marry me off," Graham said, taking a sip of his drink. David chuckled. "To who?" "Vanessa Henderson. The socialite who's been on the cover of every magazine this year?" Graham nodded, though David couldn't see him. "That's the one." "Could be worse," David said. "I'm not interested in being part of some business merger disguised as a marriage," Graham replied. "But my mother has backed me into a corner," she told. "The board I'd be bringing my girlfriend to the anniversary gala." "What girlfriend?" "Exactly." There was a pause before David said, "You know, there might be a solution. My cousin runs an agency for event companions, professional, discreet. You could hire someone to play the part for a few weeks." Graham considered it. It wasn't ideal, but it would buy him time. "Send me the information." Across town, in a small apartment that had seen better days, Jasmine Bennett wrapped up her online music lesson with a bright smile that vanished the moment she ended the call. She checked her bank account on her phone. The balance was lower than she'd hoped. The rent was due next week and her mother's medical bills kept piling up. The phone rang. It was her mother. "Hi, Mum," Jasmine answered, trying to sound cheerful. "Jasmine." "Dear, how are you?" "I'm good, just finished teaching. How are you feeling today?" "Better," her mother said, though Jasmine could hear the fatigue in her voice. "The doctor says the new medication is working." "That's great news, but the bill came in. It's quite high." Jasmine closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. "Don't worry about that. I'll handle it. I hate being a burden on you." "You're not a burden, Mom." "Never think that." Jasmine looked at the calendar on her wall, where she'd marked the weekend of the charity event she was supposed to attend as a paid companion. "I have an event coming up. The pay is good." "One of those escort things?" Her mother's voice was filled with concern. "You know I worry about you doing those jobs." It's just accompanying businessmen to events, Mum. Nothing more. It's safe, and it pays well. After reassuring her mother and hanging up, Jasmine checked her email. There was a message from the agency about a last-minute high-paying opportunity. She opened it eagerly. The job seemed different from her usual assignments. This client needed someone to pose as his girlfriend for several weeks, attending multiple events. The pay was 10 times what she usually made. It seemed too good to be true. Jasmine bit her lip as she read the details. This wasn't just escorting someone to a single event. This was a sustained deception. But with that kind of money, she could pay off her mother's medical bills and maybe even put a down payment on a better apartment. She dialed the agency's number. Elite Companions, this is Rachel. Hi, Rachel. It's Jasmine Bennett. I'm calling. About the special assignment. Ah, yes, the client specifically requested someone with your profile. He wants to meet tomorrow to discuss the arrangement. Are you interested? Jasmine hesitated for only a second. Yes, I'll do it. The next day, Jasmine found herself in a private dining room at one of Boston's most exclusive restaurants. She wore her only good dress, a simple navy blue number that she hoped looked expensive enough. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she'd applied minimal makeup, aiming for a natural, sophisticated look. When Graham Sinclair walked in, Jasmine immediately recognized him from business magazines. In person, he was even more intimidating. Tall, with perfect posture and sharp features that rarely seemed to smile. His custom suit probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. Miss Bennett, he said, extending his hand. Graham Sinclair. His handshake was firm but brief, as if he was careful not to maintain contact for too long. Please sit. He gestured to the chair across from him. As they sat down, a waiter appeared with water and menus, then quickly disappeared. I assume the agency. She explained the basics of what I'm looking for, Graham said, getting straight to business. Jasmine nodded. You need someone to pose as your girlfriend for a few weeks. Correct. My family and business associates need to believe we're in a serious relationship. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. I've prepared a contract outlining the arrangement. Jasmine took the folder, surprised by his directness. A contract? I believe in clear terms the arrangement would last for 6 weeks. You'd need to attend several events with me, including family dinners and business functions. The most important is the Sinclair Enterprises Anniversary Gala at the end of the month. Jasmine skimmed the document, her eyes widening at the figure on the last page. This is a very generous offer. I expect professionalism and discretion. No one can know this is an arrangement. We'll need a believable backstory for how we met and started dating. I understand, Jasmine said, still processing the amount of money being offered. It would solve all her financial problems in one stroke. Graham studied her with analytical eyes. Do you have any questions? What about physical expectations? Jasmine asked carefully. The agency assured me this was a companionship arrangement only. It is, Graham said firmly. We'll need to appear comfortable with each other, holding hands, perhaps the occasional kiss on the cheek for appearances. Nothing more. Jasmine nodded, relieved. And our backstory? How did we meet? I thought you could help with that. It should be something simple but believable. Jasmine considered for a moment. What about a charity concert? I am a music teacher. We could say I was performing and you were attending. Graham nodded, seemingly impressed by her quick thinking. That works. When can you start? I can start immediately. Good. We'll need to spend some time together first. Learn about each other's lives, preferences, habits. We need to convince people we've been dating for at least 3 months. Like homework for a role, Jasmine said with a small smile. Graham didn't return the smile. Exactly. This is a business arrangement, Miss Bennett. I'm hiring you to do a job. Of course, Jasmine said, her smile fading. Just business. The first event is a dinner at my mother's house this Saturday. She's eager to meet the woman who's finally captured my attention. His tone made it clear how ridiculous he found the situation. I'll be ready. Graham slid a pen across the table. If you're satisfied with the terms, we can finalize the agreement now. Jasmine picked up the pen, hesitating for just a moment. She thought of her mother's medical bills, of the constant struggle to make ends meet. Then she signed her name, Graham took the contract back, his expression unchanged. My assistant will contact you tomorrow with details. We'll need to meet a few times before Saturday to prepare. As he stood up to leave, Jasmine found her voice. Mr. Sinclair? He paused, looking at her questioningly. Why me? I'm sure the agency has many women who could do this job. For the first time, Graham seemed slightly caught off guard. The agency sent several profiles. Yours stood out as authentic. The board and my family wouldn't believe I'd date a typical socialite or model. You have substance. With that, he nodded goodbye and left Jasmine sitting alone, wondering what she'd just gotten herself into. By Saturday evening, Jasmine had spent nearly 20 hours with Graham, memorizing details about his life and creating their fictional relationship. They'd practiced how they would act together, rehearsed their story, and even taken photos together to establish a history on social media. Now, as Graham's car approached his mother's mansion, Jasmine felt her nerves rising. Remember, Graham said as the driver pulled up to the entrance, my mother is perceptive. She'll be looking for inconsistencies. Jasmine smoothed down her borrowed dress, an elegant but understated design that Graham's stylist had selected for her. I remember everything we discussed. Don't worry. For a moment, Graham looked at her with something close to appreciation. You're good at this. I'm a music teacher. Performance comes naturally, she replied with a small smile. As they walked to the door, Graham surprised her by taking her hand. His touch was warm and unexpectedly gentle. Ready? He asked. Jasmine squeezed his hand, reminding herself this was just a role. Ready. The door opened to reveal Margaret Sinclair, elegant and imposing, with Catherine standing beside her. Both women eyed Jasmine with undisguised curiosity. Mother Catherine, Graham said, his voice warmer than Jasmine had heard before. This is Jasmine Bennett, the woman I've been telling you about. Margaret extended her hand. At last. We were beginning to think you were a figment of Graham's imagination. Jasmine took her hand, smiling confidently. It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Sinclair. Graham speaks so highly of you. Does he? Margaret raised an eyebrow, looking at her. Son, that would be a first. Catherine moved forward to greet Jasmine. I'm Catherine, the sister who's been trying to get this workaholic to have a personal life for years. Thank you for succeeding where I failed. As they moved into the dining room, Jasmine felt all eyes on her. Graham placed his hand on the small of her back, guiding her, and she was surprised by how natural it felt. So, Jasmine, Margaret began once they were seated, Graham tells me you're a music teacher. How did you two meet? Jasmine launched into their rehearsed story, watching Graham from the corner of her eye. For someone who claimed to be bad at deception, he played his part well, looking at her with what appeared to be genuine affection. I never would have guessed Graham would fall for a teacher, Catherine said. No offense, Jasmine, it's just that my brother usually surrounds himself with business associates, not creative types. None taken, Jasmine said with a laugh. I was as surprised as anyone when he asked me out after the concert. What was it about Jasmine that caught your attention, Graham? Margaret asked directly. Graham looked at Jasmine, and for a moment, she saw something unscripted in his eyes. Her authenticity, he said quietly. In a world of people who want something from me, Jasmine was refreshingly real. The sincerity in his voice caught Jasmine off guard. She felt a strange flutter in her chest and quickly reminded herself. This was all an act. As the evening progressed, Jasmine found herself enjoying the role more than she expected. Graham's family was intimidating but interesting, and pretending to be the girlfriend of one of Boston's most eligible bachelors had its appeal. By the time dessert was served, Margaret seemed less suspicious, even smiling occasionally at Jasmine's stories about her students. For you must come to the Henderson Charity Gala next weekend, Margaret said. The whole family will be there. We've already planned to attend, Graham said, placing his hand over Jasmine's on the table. His touch sent an unexpected warmth through her. Jasmine smiled, trying to ignore the confused emotions rising within her. It's just a job, she reminded herself silently. Just an act. But when Graham looked at her with those intense blue eyes, smiling in a way she hadn't seen before, Part of her wondered if 6 weeks would be long enough to keep her heart from getting involved in their contract of love. The week following the dinner at Margaret's house passed in a blur for Jasmine. Graham had insisted she move temporarily into the guest house on his estate to make their relationship more believable, he said. The small cottage behind his mansion was more luxurious than any place she'd ever lived, with its own garden and a baby grand piano that she couldn't resist playing whenever she had a moment alone. Jasmine sat at the piano, her fingers dancing, across the keys playing a Chopin nocturne that had always soothed her. She was so absorbed in the music that she didn't notice Graham standing in the doorway until she finished the piece. "That was beautiful," he said, startling her. Jasmine turned, her cheeks flushing. "I didn't hear you come in," clearly. For once, Graham wasn't in his usual business suit. He wore dark jeans and a casual button-down shirt that made him look younger, more approachable. "I didn't know you played so well." "It's what I teach," she reminded him with a small smile. "Did you need something?" Graham stepped into the room, his hands in his pockets. "We have the Henderson Charity Gala tonight. I wanted to make sure you were prepared." "I've been studying the notes your assistant provided," Jasmine said, standing up from the piano bench. "I know the names of all the board members and their spouses." "Good." Graham nodded, but he seemed distracted. "There's something else. Vanessa. Henderson will be there. The woman your mother wanted you to marry." "Yes?" "Her family has been trying to orchestrate this match for months. She'll be attentive." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Are you warning me or asking for help?" For the first time since she'd met him, Graham looked slightly uncomfortable. "Both, I suppose. Vanessa can be persistent." "Don't worry," Jasmine said with a confident smile. "I can be quite convincing as the jealous girlfriend if needed." Graham's eyes locked with hers for a moment too long. "Just remember who will be watching. This gala is important. Many of these people will be at the company anniversary event at the end of the month." "I won't let you down," Jasmine assured him. "That's what you're paying me for, right?" Something flickered across Graham's face. Disappointment, perhaps. But it was gone so quickly that Jasmine thought she might have imagined it. "The car will be ready at 7, he said, his business tone returning. "The stylist left several options for you in the bedroom." After Graham left, Jasmine went to look at the dresses. There were 3 evening gowns, each one more beautiful than anything she'd ever owned. She chose an emerald green dress that complemented her olive skin and dark hair. As she examined herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. "This isn't real," she whispered to her reflection. "Don't forget that." The Henderson estate was ablaze with lights, the long driveway lined with luxury, cars and well-dressed guests. As Graham and Jasmine walked in, his hand resting lightly on her back, she felt all eyes turned toward them. "Graham Sinclair actually brought a date," she heard someone whisper. "I never thought I'd see the day." Graham leaned closer to her ear. "Ignore them, you look beautiful." The compliment took her by surprise. It wasn't part of their rehearsed interactions. Before she could respond, Margaret Sinclair approached with, "An elegant couple." "Graham, Jasmine," Margaret said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You remember Charles and Eleanor Henderson, our hosts." Charles Henderson shook Graham's hand firmly. "Good to see you, son. Your mother tells me you've been distracted lately." His eyes moved to Jasmine, assessing her. "Not distracted," Graham corrected, his arm sliding around Jasmine's waist. "Just prioritizing what matters." Eleanor Henderson's smile tightened. "How lovely. Vanessa will be so disappointed. She was looking forward to spending time with you tonight, Graham." "I'm sure she'll understand," Graham replied smoothly. "Where is she?" As if on cue, a stunning blonde in a red dress that left little to the imagination approached the group. Vanessa Henderson was exactly what Jasmine had expected, beautiful, polished, and looking at Graham like he was already hers. "Graham, darling," Vanessa said, leaning in to kiss his cheek, lingering a moment too long. "I've missed you at the club." "I've been busy," Graham said, stepping back slightly to pull Jasmine closer. "Vanessa, this is Jasmine Bennett, my girlfriend." The key word girlfriend still sounded strange coming from Graham's lips, but Jasmine noticed he said it with increasing confidence each time. Vanessa's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly as she looked Jasmine up and down. "Girlfriend? How unexpected." Mother didn't mention you were bringing someone. It wasn't a recent development, Jasmine said, placing her hand on Graham's chest in a gesture of possession. We've been together for months now. Graham just prefers to keep his private life private. Vanessa's smile was like ice. How interesting, and what do you do, Jasmine? I'm a music teacher, Jasmine said proudly, refusing to be intimidated. A teacher? How quaint. Vanessa turned her attention back to Graham. The first dance is starting soon. For old time's sake? She held out her hand expectantly. Graham looked at Jasmine, a silent question in his eyes. They hadn't discussed this scenario. Go ahead, Jasmine said with a smile that suggested complete confidence in their relationship. I'll get us some drinks. As Graham reluctantly followed Vanessa to the dance floor, Catherine appeared at Jasmine's side. Don't worry about Vanessa, Catherine said, handing Jasmine a glass of champagne. She's been trying to get her claws into Graham for years. I'm not worried, Jasmine replied, though she couldn't help watching as Vanessa pressed herself closer to Graham while they danced. You're different from his usual type, Catherine observed. In a good way. I've never seen my brother look at anyone the way he looks at you. Jasmine took a sip of champagne to hide her surprise. And how is that? Like he's finally found something money can't buy. Catherine smiled. You're good for him, Jasmine. Don't let Vanessa or my mother make you think otherwise. On the dance floor, Jasmine could see Vanessa whispering something in Graham's ear. His expression remained neutral, but his eyes sought out Jasmine across the room. When their gazes met, something passed between them, a connection that felt far too real for comfort. Later, as Jasmine stood near one of the large windows overlooking the gardens, she overheard a conversation from the terrace outside. She's nobody, Graham, Vanessa's voice said. A music teacher. What can she possibly offer you that I can't? That's not your concern, Graham replied, his voice cold. Our families have been planning this for years. Your mother and mine have already discussed the merger possibilities. I'm not a commodity to be traded, Vanessa. No, you're a businessman, Vanessa said sharply. And this would be the smartest business move of your career. The Henderson fortune combined with Sinclair Enterprises, we'd be unstoppable. There was a pause before Graham replied. There's more to life than business deals. Vanessa laughed a brittle sound. Since when? The Graham Sinclair I know lives and breathes business. What has this woman done to you? Jasmine stepped back from the window, her heart racing. She shouldn't be eavesdropping, but she couldn't help feeling a strange sense of pride at Graham's words. A moment later, Graham came back inside, his jaw tense. When he saw Jasmine, his expression softened. There you are, he said, coming to her side. Ready for our dance? As they moved onto the dance floor, Graham held her closer than necessary. For their charade, his hand on the small of her back was warm, secure. Everything okay? Jasmine asked quietly. I saw you talking with Vanessa. Just the usual attempt to negotiate a merger disguised as a marriage, Graham said with a hint of bitterness. Nothing new. Your sister thinks I'm good for you, Jasmine said, trying to lighten the mood. Graham's eyes met hers. Catherine's always been perceptive. The intensity in his gaze made Jasmine's breath catch. This was dangerous territory. She needed to remember that this was all pretend, a business arrangement with an expiration date. You're a good dancer, she said, changing the subject. Years of mandatory cotillion lessons, Graham replied with the hint of a smile. My mother insisted. As they swayed to the music, Jasmine became acutely aware of every point where their bodies touched, of his hand in hers, of the subtle scent of his cologne. It was becoming harder to remember that none of this was real. The following days brought a new routine. Jasmine would teach her online music lessons in the morning from the guest house, then join Graham for lunch or an event. They were photographed having dinner at exclusive restaurants, attending the symphony, and walking through the public garden on a sunny afternoon. Jasmine was surprised by how easy it became to act like a couple in public. One evening, as they returned from a dinner with Graham's business associates, Jasmine kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. Remind me to wear more comfortable shoes next time, she said, sinking onto the couch in the guest house living room. Graham smiled. Something He'd been doing more frequently lately. You handled Jeffrey's questions about our future plans very smoothly. I'm getting good at improvising, Jasmine said, though I wasn't expecting him to ask when we're getting married. Neither was I, Graham admitted, loosening his tie as he sat down beside her. That's the third time this week someone has brought it up. Your plan is working too well, Jasmine teased. Now everyone wants to see Graham Sinclair settled down. As long as it keeps my mother from pushing Vanessa Henderson on me, I'll consider it a success. Jasmine studied him curiously. Can I ask you something personal? Graham raised an eyebrow. You're supposed to be my girlfriend. I think that gives you the right. Why are you so against marriage? Is it just about avoiding Vanessa, or is there more to it? Graham was quiet for a long moment. My parents' marriage was a business arrangement. There was no love, just mutual benefit. My father worked constantly, and my mother focused on maintaining the family's social position. I grew up watching them live separate lives under the same roof. That sounds lonely, Jasmine said softly. It was efficient, Graham countered, but there was no conviction in his voice. I learned early that emotional attachments were a weakness in business. But life isn't just business, Jasmine said. Says the music teacher, Graham replied with a small smile. What about you? No serious relationships in your past? Jasmine hesitated. This wasn't part of their script, but sharing something real felt right. I was engaged once in college. He was a pianist, brilliantly talented. We had big plans to travel, perform together. What happened? My mother got sick. I had to drop out, start teaching to pay the bills. Jasmine shrugged, trying to make it seem less painful than it was. He got a scholarship to study in Europe. He asked me to go with him, but I couldn't leave my mother, so he left without me. He chose his career over you, Graham said, a note of anger in his voice that surprised her. I don't blame him. We were young. Dreams don't pay medical bills. Graham studied her face. You sacrificed your dreams for your mother. That's admirable. It's what family does, Jasmine said simply. I still get to teach music, play when I can. It's not the life I planned, but it has its moments. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the conversation having shifted something between them. It was no longer strictly business. They had shared pieces of themselves, real pieces. I should get some rest, Jasmine finally said, standing up. I have an early lesson tomorrow. Graham stood as well, suddenly looking uncertain, an expression she'd never seen on his face before. Jasmine, his phone rang, interrupting whatever he was about to say. He checked the screen and frowned. It's my mother. I should take this. Jasmine nodded, oddly disappointed. Good night, Graham. Good night, he said, his eyes lingering on her face before he answered the call. The next morning, Jasmine was surprised when Graham knocked on her door during her break between lessons. I need your help with something, he said, looking uncharacteristically nervous. My mother has invited us to the family lake house this weekend. The entire extended family will be there. That wasn't in our original agreement, Jasmine pointed out. I know, I'll compensate you additionally. Graham ran a hand through his hair. But there's something else. My grandmother will be there. She's turning 90, and this might be her last family gathering. And she's always been different from the rest of the family. More genuine. I can't lie to her, Jasmine. I just can't. Jasmine felt a pang of sympathy. This was the most vulnerable she'd seen him. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to tell her the truth, only her, about our arrangement. That's risky, Jasmine said carefully. What if she tells someone else? Graham shook his head. She wouldn't. My grandmother has always kept my secrets. Jasmine considered his request. If I agree, I'll need to understand our story better. The real story, not just what we tell everyone else. Why did you really hire me? What are you running from? Graham's expression turned serious. You're right. You deserve the full truth. He gestured to the couch. This might take a while. As they sat down, Jasmine sensed they were crossing another boundary, from a professional arrangement into something more complicated. But as Graham began to explain the real pressures he faced from his family and the board, the truth about his father's death and the company's vulnerabilities, she found herself caring more than she should. So you see, Graham concluded, this isn't just about avoiding an arranged marriage. It's about proving I can lead the company my way, without following the same path that destroyed my father. Jasmine touched his hand gently. I'll help you, Graham, with your grandmother and the rest of it. The gratitude in his eyes made her heart skip. When he covered her hand with his, she told herself the warmth she felt was just part of the role she was playing. But deep down, she was beginning to fear that the line between pretend and reality was blurring with each passing day. What started as a simple contract was turning into something neither of them had bargained for, something that money couldn't buy and that no business agreement could contain. The Sinclair Lake House was nothing like what Jasmine had imagined. Instead of the modern mansion she expected, it was a sprawling, rustic lodge with a wide porch that wrapped around the entire building. Large windows overlooked the serene lake, where a small dock extended into the water with a few boats tied alongside it. It's beautiful, Jasmine said as Graham parked the car in front of the house. Unlike their other outings, he had chosen to drive them here himself in his less flashy SUV. This was my grandfather's favorite place, Graham explained, a softness in his voice she rarely heard. He built it himself 50 years ago. My grandmother refused to let my father renovate it after he died. I can see why, Jasmine said, stepping out of the car. It has character, Graham smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his usually serious face. That's exactly what my grandmother always says. As they retrieved their bags from the trunk, the front door opened. An elderly woman with silver hair and bright, alert eyes stood there, leaning slightly on a wooden cane carved with intricate patterns. "You're late," she called out, her voice surprisingly strong. "I expected you an hour ago, Graham." Graham walked up the steps and embraced the woman gently. "The traffic was terrible, Gran. You know how it gets on summer weekends." The woman's sharp eyes moved to Jasmine, who was approaching with her overnight bag. "And this must be the girlfriend I've been hearing so much about." "Jasmine Bennett," Graham said, reaching back to take Jasmine's hand and draw her forward. "This is my grandmother, Eleanor Sinclair." "It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Sinclair," Jasmine said warmly. Eleanor studied her for a long moment, her gaze penetrating. "Call me Eleanor, dear. Mrs. Sinclair makes me feel ancient." She turned and headed back into the house. "Come in, both of you. The others won't arrive until tomorrow. We have the place to ourselves tonight." Inside, the house was cozy and warm, with wooden beams across high ceilings and a massive stone fireplace dominating the great room. Photos of the Sinclair family through the generations lined the walls. "Make yourselves comfortable," Eleanor said. "Dinner will be ready in an hour. Martha's made her famous pot roast." "Who's Martha?" Jasmine whispered to Graham as Eleanor disappeared into the kitchen. "The housekeeper. She's been with my grandmother." "For 30 years, Graham explained. "I'll show you to our room." Jasmine followed him up a wide staircase to the second floor. "Our room?" she asked, suddenly nervous. "As in, one room?" Graham looked slightly embarrassed. "My grandmother may be open-minded, but she's still traditional in some ways. Don't worry, I'll take the sofa." The bedroom was large and inviting, with a four-poster bed and windows that offered a stunning view of the lake. A small sitting area with a comfortable-looking sofa sat near a fireplace. "This was my room whenever we visited as children," Graham said, setting down his bag. "My grandmother keeps it exactly the same." Jasmine noticed the books on the shelves, adventure novels, science texts, even some comics. She picked up a framed photo of a young boy with a fishing rod, proudly holding up a small fish. "Is this you?" she asked, smiling at the gap-toothed grin of the child in the picture. Graham nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. "My first catch. I was 7. "You look happy," Jasmine observed. "I was here." Graham's voice held a note of nostalgia. "The lake house was the one place where business didn't follow us. My father would put away his phone, my mother would stop planning social events, and we'd just be a family." Jasmine set the photo back carefully. "It sounds special." It was. Graham checked his watch. "We should freshen up before dinner." My grandmother hates tardiness. At dinner, Jasmine was surprised by the casual atmosphere. Eleanor served them herself, waving away Graham's attempts to help. The dining room was less formal than she expected, with a well-worn wooden table and chairs that had clearly seen decades of family meals. "So, Jasmine," Eleanor said as they ate, Graham tells me you're a music teacher. Yes, mostly piano and voice, Jasmine replied, though lately I've been teaching online due to the pandemic. Do you play any other instruments? A little violin? But piano has always been my first love. Eleanor's eyes lit up. We have a beautiful old Steinway in the music room. Graham's grandfather insisted on buying it, though none of us had much talent. Perhaps you could play for us after dinner. I'd love to, Jasmine said sincerely. Graham used to play, you know, Eleanor continued, ignoring her grandson's warning look. He was quite good until his father decided sports were more important. For a Sinclair heir. You played piano? Jasmine asked, genuinely surprised. Not well, Graham said quickly. False modesty, Eleanor countered. He had a natural ear. William was devastated when Harold put an end to the lessons. She turned to Jasmine. William was my late husband, Graham's grandfather. He believed in raising well-rounded children, not just business machines. Graham looked uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Gran, I'm sure Jasmine doesn't want to hear about my failed childhood hobbies. On the contrary, Jasmine said with a smile, I find it fascinating. The Graham Sinclair I know seems to have sprung fully formed as a businessman. Eleanor laughed, a bright, clear sound. Oh, I like her, Graham. She sees right through your CEO facade. She reached over to pat Jasmine's hand. He wasn't always so serious, dear. As a child, he was quite the adventurer, always exploring, asking questions, getting into mischief. Graham cleared his throat. I believe you promised to save the embarrassing stories until at least the second visit, Gran. Did I? Eleanor's eyes twinkled mischievously. My memory must be failing me in my old age. The conversation flowed easily through the rest of dinner, with Eleanor sharing stories of Graham's childhood that revealed a side of him Jasmine had never imagined existed. She found herself laughing more than she had in months, watching as Graham gradually relaxed, occasionally jumping in to defend himself against his grandmother's more outlandish tales. After dinner, Eleanor insisted that Jasmine play the piano. The music room was a small, intimate space with large windows facing the lake. The Steinway, though old, was perfectly maintained. Jasmine sat at the bench, running her fingers lightly over the keys. Any requests? Play something you love, Eleanor said, settling into an armchair nearby. Graham stood by the window, watching Jasmine with an unreadable expression. Jasmine began with Debussy's Clair de Lune, the gentle notes filling the room. She closed her eyes as she played, losing herself in the music as she always did. When she finished, she opened her eyes to find both Eleanor and Graham watching her intently. Beautiful, Eleanor said softly. You play with your heart, not just your hands. Indeed, Graham agreed, his voice unusually quiet. Play something else, Eleanor requested. Something lively this time. Jasmine launched into a ragtime piece that had the elderly woman tapping her foot in time. When she glanced at Graham, she was shocked to see him smiling. Not his usual controlled, polite smile, but something genuine that reached his eyes. Later, after Eleanor had retired for the night, Jasmine and Graham sat on the porch, watching the moonlight reflect off the lake. The night was warm, with a gentle breeze rustling the trees around them. Your grandmother is wonderful, Jasmine said, breaking the comfortable silence. She is, Graham agreed. She's always been different from the rest of the family, more interested in people than power or money. She reminds me of my mother in some ways, Jasmine admitted, that same directness. Graham turned to look at her. You haven't told me much about your family beyond your mother's illness. Jasmine sighed, leaning back in her chair. There's not much to tell. My father left when I was 12. It's been just me and my mom ever since. She worked 2 jobs to put me through school, always believed in my music even when it seemed impractical. What's wrong with her, if you don't mind my asking? Multiple sclerosis, Jasmine said quietly. It was manageable for years, but it's progressing faster now. The new treatments are helping, but they're expensive. Graham was silent for a moment. Is that why you took this job? The escort work? Jasmine nodded. Teaching doesn't pay enough for the specialist she needs. The escort agency was supposed to be temporary, just to catch up on bills. Then your offer came along, which was too good to pass up. Graham finished for her. Yes. Jasmine looked out at the lake, feeling suddenly vulnerable. This arrangement will cover her treatments for a full year. I couldn't say no to that. Graham's expression grew serious. Jasmine, if you need more... No, she said firmly. What you're paying is more than fair. I'm not looking for charity. It wouldn't be charity, Graham said, sounding frustrated. It would be... What? Jasmine challenged when he didn't continue. Graham stood up, moving to the porch railing. I don't know. I don't like thinking of you struggling. The admission hung in the air between them, unexpected and heavy, with implications. We should tell my grandmother the truth tomorrow, Graham said suddenly, changing the subject, about our arrangement. Jasmine nodded, though part of her was inexplicably disappointed. Of course. That's what we agreed. She'll be discreet, Graham assured her, but I can't lie to her, not here. I understand. Jasmine stood up as well. We should get some rest. It sounds like tomorrow will be busy once everyone arrives. In the bedroom, Graham made up the sofa for himself, while Jasmine took the bed. As she lay in the darkness, listening to his steady breathing across the room, she found herself wondering what it would be like if their relationship were real, if the tenderness she occasionally glimpsed in his eyes wasn't just part of an act. Dangerous. Thoughts, she whispered to herself. This is just business. The next morning, Jasmine woke to find Graham already gone. A note on the bedside table told her he had gone for a walk with his grandmother and would be back soon. She showered and dressed, then made her way downstairs where Martha was preparing breakfast. Good morning, the housekeeper greeted her warmly. You must be Jasmine. I'm Martha. Coffee? Yes, please, Jasmine said gratefully. Graham. And Eleanor are down by the lake, Martha said, pouring a cup. They always take an early walk when he visits. It's their special time. Jasmine looked out the window and saw them in the distance, Graham walking slowly beside his grandmother along the shoreline. Even from here, she could see the care with which he matched his pace to the elderly woman's, occasionally offering his arm on uneven ground. He's different with her, Jasmine observed. Martha smiled, setting a plate of eggs and toast in front of her. Helena is the only one who ever saw the real Graham. After his grandfather died, she became his safe harbor. She studied Jasmine curiously. He must care for you a great deal to bring you here. This place is sacred to him. Jasmine felt a pang of guilt at the deception. He's not what I expected when we first met. The Sinclair men have always hidden their hearts behind their business suits, Martha said wisely. His grandfather was the same way until Eleanor wore him down. Before Jasmine could respond, the front door opened, and Graham entered with his grandmother. They were both laughing about something, and the sight of Graham so unguarded made Jasmine's heart flutter. Good morning, she called, trying to ignore the feeling. Jasmine, Graham said, his smile lingering as he looked at her. I hope you slept well. Perfectly, she assured him. Eleanor settled at the table with a satisfied sigh. Graham has just been telling me about how you two met. The charity concert story is very romantic. Jasmine glanced at Graham, confused. They were supposed to tell his grandmother the truth. Gran, Graham said, sitting down beside the elderly woman. There's something we need to tell you about that. Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. Oh, I know it's not true, dear. For you... No. Graham looked shocked. Of course I know, Eleanor said, helping herself to toast. You're a terrible liar, Graham. Always have been. Besides, no woman could put up with your workaholic tendencies after just 3 months of dating. Unless she was being paid very well. Jasmine nearly choked on her coffee. Mrs. Sinclair, Eleanor, please, and don't look so worried, dear. I'm not judging either of you. She patted Graham's hand. I understand why you felt this was necessary. Your mother can be persistent. You're not disappointed? Graham asked, sounding like a young boy again. Eleanor's face softened. The only thing that disappoints me is that you felt you needed to resort to this. But I understand the pressure you're under. She turned to Jasmine. And I appreciate your discretion and professionalism, my dear. Though I suspect there might be more happening here than either of you planned. Jasmine felt her cheeks warm. I don't know what you mean. Of course not, Eleanor said with a knowing smile. Now, when does the rest of the family arrive? I need to prepare myself for Margaret's inevitable critiques of my housekeeping. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity, as Graham's mother, sister, and various aunts, uncles, and cousins arrived for the family weekend. To Jasmine's surprise, Graham stayed close to her throughout, his hand often finding the small of her back or clasping hers as they moved through the gathering. During a moment alone on the dock while the others prepared for the birthday dinner, Jasmine confronted him. "Your grandmother already knew, but you didn't tell her the whole story this morning," she said. "Why?" Graham looked out at the water. "I was going to, but then I realized something. I don't want this to be just business anymore, Jasmine." "Her," heart skipped a beat. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, there you are." Catherine's voice interrupted them as she approached the dock. "Mum's looking for you both. The photographer is ready for family pictures." Graham sighed, the moment broken. "We'll be right there." As they walked back to the house, Jasmine felt confused. Was Graham suggesting what she thought he was, and if so, what did that mean for their arrangement? The birthday dinner was a grand affair, with Eleanor at the head of the table surrounded by 3 generations of Sinclairs. Jasmine was seated next to Graham, across from Margaret, who had been coolly polite all day. "Jasmine," Margaret said during a lull in the conversation, "Graham tells me you teach music to children. What a rewarding career that must be." The condescension in her tone was unmistakable. "It is rewarding," Jasmine agreed, refusing to be intimidated. "Helping children discover their passion for music is a privilege." "And the pay?" Margaret asked bluntly. "I imagine it must be difficult to support yourself." "Mother," Graham warned, but Jasmine touched his arm. "I do just fine," she said calmly. "Not everyone measures success by the size of their bank account, Mrs. Sinclair." Eleanor chuckled from the head of the table. "Well said, my dear. Some of the richest people I know are the most miserable." "No offense intended, Margaret." Margaret's lips thinned, but she said nothing more on the subject. Later, as cake was being served, Eleanor stood to address her family. "I want to thank you all for coming today. At 90, I don't take these gatherings for granted." She looked around the table, her gaze lingering on Graham and Jasmine. "I've been blessed with a long life and have learned that what matters most isn't what we achieve or acquire, but who we love and how deeply we allow ourselves to be loved in return." Her words seemed directed specifically at Graham, who shifted uncomfortably beside Jasmine. "Some of you," Eleanor continued, her eyes twinkling, "might benefit from remembering that the Sinclair fortune was built not just on smart business decisions, but on the foundation of William's and my partnership. He was the head, but I was the heart, and both are necessary." After dinner, as the family dispersed throughout the house, Graham pulled Jasmine into the library, closing the door behind them. "I need to tell you something," he said, his expression serious. "What is it?" Jasmine asked, suddenly nervous. "Earlier on the dock, I was trying to say—" A sharp knock on the door interrupted him again. Martha poked her head in. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Sinclair, but there's an urgent call from your office. Mr. Davis says it can't wait." Graham closed his eyes briefly, frustrated. "I'll take it in the study." After he left, Jasmine wandered back to the music room, finding it empty. She sat at the piano, playing softly, trying to sort through her conflicted feelings. When Eleanor joined her sometime later, Jasmine wasn't surprised. "You play beautifully," the elderly woman said, sitting in a nearby chair. "Graham hasn't taken his eyes off you all day, you know." Jasmine's fingers faltered on the keys. "Mrs. Sinclair, Eleanor, I don't know what to think anymore. This started as a business arrangement, but now you're falling in love with my grandson," Eleanor finished for her. "I didn't say that," Jasmine protested weakly. "You didn't have to, dear. It's written all over your face when you look at him." Eleanor leaned forward. "And if it helps, I believe he feels the same way." "That's impossible," Jasmine said, shaking her head. He's Graham Sinclair. He doesn't fall for women like me." "And what kind of woman are you?" "Ordinary, struggling, without connections or family money." Eleanor laughed softly. "My dear, those are exactly the reasons he's falling for you. You're real in a way no one in his world has ever been." She reached out to pat Jasmine's hand. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Jasmine stared at the piano keys. "Nothing. In 2 weeks, our contract ends. He'll pay me, and we'll go our separate ways." "Is that what you want?" "What I want doesn't matter," Jasmine said quietly. "This isn't a fairy tale. Millionaires don't fall in love with the help. Eleanor studied her for a long moment. You underestimate him, Jasmine, and yourself. She stood up slowly. When William proposed to me, everyone said it wouldn't last. I was just a farmer's daughter, and he was from one of Boston's oldest families. 63 years we were married, and he never once regretted his choice. After Eleanor left, Jasmine remained at the piano, her mind racing. Could Graham really have feelings for her? And if he did, could anything real come from such a complicated beginning? When Graham finally returned from his business call hours later, most of the family had retired for the night. He found Jasmine on the porch, wrapped in a blanket against the night chill. I'm sorry about that, he said, sitting beside her. There was an issue with one of our European acquisitions. It's fine, Jasmine said. That's your real life. This is just temporary. Graham frowned. Is that what you think? That none of this is real? Isn't that the truth? Jasmine challenged. We made a deal, Graham. I pretend to be your girlfriend. You pay me. In 2 weeks, it's over. What if I don't want it to be over? Graham asked quietly. Jasmine's heart pounded. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere between the fake dates and family dinners, something changed. Graham moved closer, taking her hand. I've never met anyone like you, Jasmine. Someone who sees past the name and the money to the person underneath. Graham, Let me finish, he said gently. I know how this started. I know I'm paying you to be here. But what I feel for you now has nothing to do with our contract. Jasmine felt tears threatening. You can't be serious. I'm not part of your world, Graham. I'm a music teacher with debt and a sick mother. You're you. Exactly. Graham reached up to touch her cheek. I'm me when I'm with you. Not Graham Sinclair, CEO, or Graham Sinclair, heir to the Sinclair fortune, just Graham. Do you know how rare that is in my life? The sincerity in his eyes made her breath catch. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe it could be possible that this man who could have anyone might actually want her. Then reality crashed back. Your mother would never accept someone like me. I don't care what my mother thinks, Graham said firmly. I care what you think, what you feel. I don't know what I feel, Jasmine admitted. This is all so confusing. I can't separate what's real from what's part of our arrangement anymore. Graham nodded, disappointment visible in his eyes, but understanding too. I understand. We have 2 more weeks before the company gala. Take that time to think about what you want. No pressure, no expectations. And if I decide this can't work, then I'll honor our original agreement, Graham said, though the words clearly pained him. You'll be paid in full and we'll go our separate ways. As they sat together in silence, watching the moonlight on the water, Jasmine felt torn between hope and fear. Could she trust these new feelings? Or was she just another acquisition in Graham Sinclair's world, a novelty that would lose its shine once possessed? The weekend at the lake house had changed everything, blurring the lines of their contract in ways neither had anticipated. What had begun as a simple business arrangement had become something far more complicated and far more real than anything money could buy. The days following the lake house weekend passed in a strange limbo. On the surface, nothing had changed. Graham and Jasmine continued their public appearances, smiling for cameras, holding hands at charity events. But beneath the facade, everything was different. Jasmine found herself watching Graham when he wasn't looking, noticing the small things. How he always remembered how she took her coffee, the way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he was genuinely amused. How he listened intently when she spoke about music, asking thoughtful questions that showed he was truly interested. For his part, Graham seemed more relaxed, less guarded. He worked fewer late nights, often inviting Jasmine to have dinner with him on the terrace of the main house instead of retreating to his study. During these evenings, they talked about everything and nothing, books they'd read, places they'd like to visit, childhood memories. One evening, a week before the Sinclair Enterprises anniversary gala, Graham surprised Jasmine by appearing at the guest house with a picnic basket. I've been in meetings all day, he explained, but the weather is too perfect to waste. Have dinner with me by the lake? The small boat dock on Graham's estate was secluded, sheltered by weeping willows that dipped their branches into the water. Graham spread a blanket and unpacked an assortment of cheeses, fruits and bread, along with a bottle of wine. "Did your chef prepare this?" Jasmine asked, accepting the glass of wine he offered. Graham looked slightly embarrassed. "Actually, I made it myself. Martha, my grandmother's housekeeper, taught me a few things when I was younger." "You continue to surprise me, Graham Sinclair," Jasmine said with a smile. "Secret piano talent and now cooking skills." "Hardly cooking," Graham demurred. "I can assemble a decent cheese plate and not burn toast. That's the extent of my culinary expertise." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun begin its descent, painting the sky with streaks of pink and gold. "The company gala is next Saturday," Graham said finally, his tone carefully neutral. "The end of our arrangement." Jasmine nodded, her heart suddenly heavy. "Yes, the grand finale. Have you thought about what I said at the lake house?" Jasmine looked down at her wineglass. "I've thought about little else. And?" Graham's voice was soft, almost vulnerable. "I'm scared, Graham." Jasmine finally met his eyes. "What you're suggesting, it feels impossible. Two different worlds." "They don't have to be," Graham said, moving closer to her on the blanket. "Jasmine, these past few weeks with you have been the most real of my life. I was going through the motions before you came along. Work, family obligations, social appearances. Nothing meant anything. And now I find myself looking forward to coming home knowing you'll be here. I catch myself smiling in the middle of board meetings, remembering something you said. I've never felt this way about anyone." Jasmine's heart raced at his words. "But what about your family? Your mother would never accept me." "My mother will adapt," Graham said firmly. "She may be difficult at first, but she wants me to be happy. Eventually she'll see that you make me happy. And the board members, the people in your social circle? I don't fit in that world, Graham." "You fit in my world," he insisted, taking her hand. "The rest doesn't matter. Besides, you've already won over my grandmother, which is no small feat. She called me yesterday to tell me not to be, and I quote, 'a stubborn fool like my father.'" Jasmine laughed despite herself. "I do adore Eleanor, and she adores you." Graham's expression turned. "Serious again?" "Jasmine, I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking for a chance. A real chance without contracts or obligations. Just you and me seeing where this might lead." Jasmine looked at their joined hands, thinking of how natural it felt now to be touched by him. What if it doesn't? Work? What if once the excitement of something new wears off, you realize I'm not what you want after all? What if it does work? Graham countered. What if this is the beginning of something extraordinary? Before she could respond, Graham's phone rang. He glanced at it with a frown. "It's David. I need to take this. It might be about the Tokyo deal." As Graham stepped away to take the call, Jasmine looked out at the water, her thoughts in turmoil. Could she really take this risk? Open herself up to the possibility of a relationship with Graham, knowing how badly she could be hurt if it didn't work out? When Graham returned, his expression was troubled. "I'm sorry, but I need to go to the office. There's an issue with the contracts that requires my immediate attention." "Of course," Jasmine said, trying to hide her disappointment. "Business comes first." Graham knelt beside her, taking both her hands in his. "No, it doesn't. You come first. But this particular situation could cost hundreds of people their jobs if I don't resolve it tonight." He kissed her forehead gently. "Rain check." "Rain check," she agreed, watching as he quickly packed up the remains of their picnic. As his car disappeared down the driveway, Jasmine lingered by the lake, wondering if this was a glimpse of what a future with Graham would be like. Beautiful. Moments interrupted by business emergencies, always coming second to the demands of Sinclair Enterprises. The next morning, Jasmine was surprised when Catherine showed up at the guest house. "Graham told me you were giving online lessons today," she said, settling onto the couch. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion." "Not at all," Jasmine assured her, offering coffee. "Is everything okay with the Tokyo deal? Graham seemed worried last night." "That's what I came to talk to you about," Catherine said, accepting the mug. "Graham was at the office all night. He's still there, actually." "That sounds serious," Catherine nodded. "It is, but not in the way you might think. The emergency was partly manufactured. What do you mean? My brother spent half the night on a conference call to Japan, yes, but the other half he spent arranging something special for you. Catherine smiled at Jasmine's confused expression. He asked for my help, which is why I'm here. He wants to see you tonight at 7, at this address. She handed Jasmine a card with an address in the city written on it. What is this about? Jasmine asked, bewildered. Graham wants to show you something important, Catherine explained. Something he hopes will answer your concerns, that's all I can say. After Catherine left, Jasmine stared at the card, wondering what Graham could possibly want to show her that would address the fundamental differences between their worlds. Later that day, a dress arrived, a simple but elegant blue gown that somehow looked like it had been made specifically for her. A note attached read simply, "For tonight." At precisely 7, Jasmine arrived at the address Catherine had given her. It was an older building in one of Boston's historic neighborhoods, far from the gleaming skyscrapers of the financial district where Graham usually worked. A doorman greeted her by name and escorted her to the elevator, pressing the button for the top floor. When the doors opened, Jasmine found herself in a spacious loft with exposed brick walls, hardwood floors, and large windows overlooking the city. In the center of the room was a familiar sight, her Steinway piano from the music school where she used to teach in-person lessons before the pandemic forced everything online. Graham stood beside it, dressed simply in slacks and a button-down shirt, no tie. How did you... Jasmine began, approaching the piano in amazement. The school was selling it, Graham explained. When you mentioned it was the instrument you learned on, I tracked it down. Jasmine ran her fingers reverently over the keys. I can't believe you remembered that. I only mentioned it once, weeks ago. I remember everything you tell me, Jasmine. Graham gestured around the loft. What do you think of this place? It's beautiful, she said honestly. So different from your house. That's not my house, Graham said quietly. That's the Sinclair mansion, where the CEO of Sinclair Enterprises is expected to live. This, he spread his arms, this could be our home, if you want it to be. Jasmine stared at him. Our home? I bought this building last year as an investment property. The previous owner of this loft was a composer. He designed the space specifically for its acoustics. Graham took her hand, leading her through the loft. There's room for a teaching studio here, where you could hold in-person lessons again. The bedroom has a small study attached that I could use when I need to work from home. Graham, I don't understand. He turned to face her, his expression earnest. You said our worlds are too different. I'm showing you that they don't have to be. I don't need the mansion or the lifestyle that comes with it. What I need is you. But your position, your family obligations, will still be part of my life, Graham acknowledged, but they don't have to dictate where and how I live. I can be Graham Sinclair, CEO during business hours, and just Graham here, with you. Jasmine felt tears gathering in her eyes. You'd give up the mansion? For me? I'd give up a lot more than that, Graham said softly. Jasmine, when I hired you, I was looking for a solution to a problem. What I found instead was the missing piece of myself. He guided her back to the piano. Play something, he requested, sitting beside her on the bench. Jasmine hesitated, then began to play one of her favorite pieces, a Chopin nocturne that she'd performed at the lake house. As she played, Graham watched her with such tenderness that she could barely breathe. When she finished, he reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. There's something else I need to tell you. Jasmine took the envelope cautiously. Inside was a bank statement showing a transfer of funds, the exact amount promised in their contract, plus a substantial additional sum. What is this? She asked, confused. The full payment for our arrangement plus a bonus, Graham explained. Consider our contract fulfilled and terminated as of this moment. Jasmine felt her heart sink. You're ending our agreement early? Yes, Graham said, taking the statement from her hands and setting it aside. Because I can't kiss you while you're still technically in my employ. It wouldn't be right. Before she could process his words, Graham cupped her face gently in his hands. Jasmine Bennett, I am completely, hopelessly in love with you. Not because of a contract, not because of convenience, but because you've shown me what it means To truly connect with someone, will you give us a chance, a real chance, with no business arrangements between us? Jasmine felt tears spill onto her cheeks. I'm afraid, she admitted. Afraid that once the novelty wears off, you'll realize I'm not enough. That I don't belong in your world. You are my world. Now, Graham said simply, everything else is just details. But your mother, let me worry about my mother, Graham insisted. All you need to worry about is whether you feel the same way I do. Jasmine looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity. The walls she'd built around her heart began to crumble. I do, she whispered. I've been fighting it because it seemed impossible, but I love you too, Graham. He smiled, a real unguarded smile that transformed his face, and then he kissed her. It was nothing like the careful for-show kisses they'd shared at public events. This was real, tender, and passionate, all at once. When they finally broke apart, Graham pressed his forehead against hers. Stay, he murmured. Not because of a contract, not because I'm paying you, stay because you want to. I want to, Jasmine said, her voice steady now, certain. But there's something you should know. I won't give up teaching. It's part of who I am. I wouldn't ask you to, Graham assured her. In fact, I have a proposal. The Sinclair Foundation has been looking to expand its community outreach programs. How would you feel about developing a music education initiative for underprivileged children? Jasmine's eyes widened. Are you serious? Completely. You'd have full creative control and a budget to hire staff. It would combine your passion for teaching with meaningful community impact. That sounds perfect, Jasmine admitted, overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. There's one more thing, Graham said, reaching into his pocket again. This time, he withdrew a small velvet box. This isn't a proposal, not yet. It's too soon for that. But it is a promise. Inside the box was a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm in the shape of a piano key. My grandmother helped me choose it, Graham said, as he fastened it around her wrist. It's a promise that whatever happens, whatever challenges we face, I'm committed to figuring it out together. It's beautiful, Jasmine whispered, touching the charm gently. There's one more surprise, Graham said. He walked to the large windows and pressed a button. Motorized blinds began to rise on a portion of the ceiling, revealing a glass ceiling and a view of the stars above. The composer who lived here installed it, Graham explained. He said he liked to compose under the stars. He looked at Jasmine with a smile. I thought you might like to play under them sometimes. Jasmine stood and moved into his arms, overwhelmed by the thought and care he'd put into every detail. How did you know exactly what would matter to me? Because I've been paying attention, Graham said softly. Not because a contract required it, but because everything about you fascinates me. They stood together looking up at the stars, and Jasmine felt a certainty she hadn't expected. The journey that had begun as a business transaction had transformed into something neither of them could have anticipated, a love that transcended their different worlds. The night of the Sinclair Enterprises Anniversary Gala arrived with all the pomp and circumstance befitting one of Boston's oldest companies. The grand ballroom of the historic hotel was decorated in the company colors, with ice sculptures and champagne fountains adding to the opulent atmosphere. In a quiet moment before they made their entrance, Graham took Jasmine's hands in his. Are you ready for this? Once we go in there together, the rumors will start. Jasmine squeezed his hands. What rumors? That Graham Sinclair is apparently head over heels for a music teacher, that he's been seen looking at engagement rings, that he's turned down 3 business dinners this month to attend recitals at the community center where his girlfriend teaches. Jasmine laughed. And are those rumors true? Every one of them, Graham confirmed with a smile. Though I'd appreciate it if you'd act surprised about the ring part when the time comes. As they entered the ballroom, Jasmine felt the weight of curious stares. Margaret Sinclair approached immediately, her smile tight as she kissed her son's cheek. Graham, the board members are eager to speak with you. Her eyes flickered to Jasmine. Perhaps your friend would like to get a drink while you handle business matters. My girlfriend will be joining us, Mother, Graham said firmly. The board should get to know the woman who will be heading the Sinclair Foundation's new music education initiative. Margaret's eyes widened. You created a position for her? Without consulting me? I didn't create anything, Graham replied calmly. Jasmine is uniquely qualified to develop this program, which the Foundation has needed for years. Her credentials are impeccable. Before Margaret could respond, Eleanor Sinclair appeared at Jasmine's side, resplendent in a midnight blue gown. "There you are, my dears, Jasmine, you look lovely." "Thank you, Eleanor," Jasmine said gratefully, accepting the elderly woman's kiss on her cheek. "Margaret, don't hover," Eleanor chided her daughter-in-law. "The Richardson family just arrived. Why don't you go greet them?" With a last measuring look at Jasmine, Margaret moved away to welcome other guests. "Don't mind her," Eleanor said. "She'll come around eventually." "And if she doesn't?" Jasmine asked. "Then she'll miss out on knowing a remarkable young woman." Eleanor patted Jasmine's hand where the charm bracelet glinted. "I see Graham gave you the bracelet. Did he tell you the piano key charm was his idea? He had it custom made." "No, he didn't mention that," Jasmine said, looking at Graham with surprise. "My grandson can be quite romantic when properly motivated," Eleanor said with a wink. "Now I believe I see the board chairman looking this way. Go make a good impression, both of you. I'll run interference with Margaret." As the evening progressed, Jasmine found herself engaged in conversations with Boston's elite, conversations that would have terrified her just weeks ago. But with Graham beside her, his pride in her evident to everyone, she felt a new confidence. During a quiet moment, Vanessa Henderson appeared, her expression calculated as she approached them. "Graham," she said, ignoring Jasmine completely, "I heard the most interesting rumor. Apparently you paid this woman to pretend to be your girlfriend to avoid our family's matchmaking. Please tell me it isn't true." Graham stiffened beside Jasmine, but before he could speak, she stepped forward. "You know what, Vanessa? It was true," Jasmine said calmly. "Graham did hire me initially. It was a business arrangement." Vanessa's triumphant smile lasted only a moment before Jasmine continued. "But somewhere along the way, the contract became irrelevant. What began as a transaction turned into the most genuine relationship either of us has ever known." She looked up at Graham, who was watching her with love and pride. "Sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings." Vanessa's face flushed with anger. "You can't possibly believe he's serious about you. You're a novelty, a distraction. Men like Graham don't end up with women like you." "Actually," Graham said, his arm tightening around Jasmine's waist, "men like me are extraordinarily lucky if women like Jasmine give them a chance." He smiled coldly at Vanessa. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I'd like to dance with the woman I love." As he led Jasmine to the dance floor, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "I can't believe I just admitted the truth to Vanessa Henderson." "You were magnificent," Graham said, drawing her into his arms as the orchestra began a waltz. "I've never been so proud, or so in love. Even though I just confirmed the gossip that will probably be all over the society pages tomorrow, especially because of that." Graham twirled her gracefully across the floor. "No more secrets, no more pretending. Just us, facing whatever comes together." As they danced, Jasmine noticed Margaret watching them from across the room, her expression unreadable. "Your mother still doesn't approve." "She will in time," Graham assured her. "But even if she doesn't, it changes nothing for me." He pulled her closer. "I love you, Jasmine Bennett. Contract or no contract, rich or poor, society's approval or not. I love you." "And I love you," Jasmine replied, realizing she truly meant it with her whole heart. "Not the millionaire, not the CEO, just you, Graham." Later that night, as they stood on the terrace of the loft, their loft now, looking at the city lights, Jasmine thought about the strange journey that had brought them here, a fake relationship that had become more real than anything she'd ever known. "What are you thinking?" Graham asked, his arms wrapped around her from behind. "I'm thinking that I never believed in fairy tales," Jasmine said honestly. "I always thought love was practical, conditional, especially when it came to someone from your world. And now," Graham turned her to face him, "now I believe that sometimes the most meaningful contracts are the ones written not on paper, but on the heart." She reached up to touch his face. "Our contract may have ended, but our story is just beginning." Graham smiled, pulling her close as the moon rose over the city. What had started as a business arrangement, a simple contract of convenience, had transformed into something far more valuable, a contract of love, signed not with ink, but with every beat of their hearts. As Jasmine stood in the circle of Graham's arms, she knew that some endings were really beginnings in disguise. Their contract had expired, but the love it had unexpectedly created was just beginning to unfold, a love no amount of money could buy and no legal document could contain.